here to talk about ways that we can become more socially conscious and more socially aware so that we can address some of these very endemic issues in our culture. How many of you saw the news this week and saw our mayor sharing how there's going to be a task force assembled to address the problem of human trafficking in our community? So I want to just lay a little bit more groundwork. I want to let us know on your handouts there is significant disparity between the number of human trafficking incidents documented by law enforcement, 190 is the number that's given, and the number of cases reported by agencies who provide services to these victims, and that number is like 500. And so that just shows you how a lot of the incidences that happen in the DeKalb County area and also in Atlanta are underdocumented. Human trafficking is such a pervasive problem in our community that, as I shared, our civic government has assembled a team to raise awareness and address these issues head on. As the church, we are called, we are mandated to social activism. And when we look at the life of Christ and the ministry of Jesus Christ, do I have any Bible readers? Jesus Christ was concerned about his community. When we look at Jesus' earthly ministry, everywhere he turned, he was concerned about somebody in the community, somebody that he saw on the street, somebody who had some type of issue, or someone who had some struggle, or someone who was a survivor, amen? And we're going to talk about that, the language of survival. And so I want to leave you with this quote by Sue Monk Kidd as we prepare for our panel. There's a gap somehow between empathy and activism. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of soul force, which is something that emanates from a deep truth inside of us and empowers us to act. And so we can't look upon the suffering of our community and not be empowered to act. And so tonight we have a very special guest with us. Can you guys give God praise right now for Dr. Margie Gill. In addition to being a dedicated wife, a dedicated mother, and a leader in our community, Dr. Gill has worked for over 25 years to provide services for persons who are not only survivors of human trafficking, but she provides services for persons who have all types of mental illnesses and mental disabilities, and she spent her entire life ministering and aiding others. And so will you join me in welcoming our moderator for our panel tonight, Dr. Margie Gill.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. How you doing? Everybody's okay? Well, tonight, first I want to thank you all for having us up here as the panel, and I want to thank the senior pastor of this ministry, Dr. Smith, for allowing us as a church to address the issues that's plaguing our communities, because just as the scripture says, we are to be social activists. That's the purpose of what we are to do. We are to go out, we are to fellowship, we are to be fishers of men. But how can we be fishers of men if we're constantly judging, we're turning our heads and our eyes to what's really happening in the community? So at this forum tonight, the goal is to increase awareness, to increase your insights about how to spot someone who may be going through this. Maybe you have experienced it and you didn't know how or where to get assistance. So we want to just shed some insight on human trafficking, more specifically sex trafficking tonight. We know that it's plaguing our communities, our schools, our state, our country by the hundreds of thousands of people. We're talking about an industry that is netting $150+ billion a year. $150 billion. On any given week, the Urban Institute released a report, and it suggests that pimps can make upward of $33,000 a week. Some of you may not make that as a salary a year. So if you are, wondering what is human trafficking? What is the purpose of this? We're going to dissect this tonight, and we'll open the floor for questions at the end, okay? So first I want to introduce the panel. We have Dr. Gabrielle Starr. Can you wave and let everybody know who you are? We have Dr. Gabrielle Starr. She's a passionate international speaker, author, social worker, and mentor, reaching the heart of today's youth and young adults to give inspiration through motivation. Her story has captivated the lives of many. Dr. Starr is the founder and executive director of the award-winning agency, Ladies of Favor Incorporated, a youth development agency which helps girls with increasing self-esteem, promoting purity and abstinence, embracing spiritual guidance, enhancing leadership, and building sisterhood. Currently, her title with the Department of Family and Children's Services is the Human Trafficking Program Manager. So she's also very knowledgeable in DFAC's involvement in those who have been trafficked as children. Her accolades go on and on and on, and I'm sure she'll let us know more about what her accomplishments are as we go through the night. Next, we have Detective DJ Weber. So Detective Weber has been in law enforcement for 22 years. Born and raised in New York City, her career began at the New York City Police Department. She started in patrol and continued on to community affairs as liaison between the police department and the community. Detective Weber then began the second half of her career with the DeKalb County Police Department. By using the experience and knowledge gained from New York Police Department, she began patrolling the streets of DeKalb County. She has also been assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children's Unit. We call it the ICAC unit. She was a part of the FBI Match Task Force and investigated cyber crimes, commercially sexually exploited youth, and human trafficking cases. While in this unit, she worked alongside neighboring counties, including out-of-state agencies, to solve cases of human trafficking. Next, we have Ms. Jada Welch. Jada is a survivor. She endured many years of being trafficked and has made a life goal to create a center and to help educate girls. She has personally witnessed the perils and mental manipulation that often follows and leads young girls astray. Jada has attended Bruton Parker College in Newton, Georgia, and majored in theology. After graduation, she has plans on ministering to teens and their parents through awareness. She would like to develop life skill programs and mentorship programs to assist young girls. And then we have Mr. Mark Taylor. Mark Taylor is a brave advocate in the fight against domestic minor sex trafficking. He is actively involved in mobilizing his church in Mableton, Georgia, to address this issue. And he shares his own story of victimization to educate others about this horrific crime. Mark is currently working on the following projects. He is starting the Buddy House, better understanding of difficulties and differences within our youth, a drop-in center. So he's putting together a training program for schools and other agencies that will discuss how to recognize the signs, what to look for in young boys and in men when you notice that change, and finally putting together a national symbol, a bow tie lapel pin that shows a male survivor, overcomer, or a person that supports this cause. So please help me welcome our guest panelists for tonight. Thank you so much. So to get started, if you were to provide a definition of human trafficking, what would that definition be?
Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would just like to say that this is a dark, dirty, horrific, reality of a lot of our young people and what they're facing and what they're dealing with. If you want to know the correct definition in regard to domestic minor sex trafficking, according to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000, it's the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act or lawful permanent resident under the age of 18 years old. And when we talk about commercial sexual exploitation of children, that is the sexual activity involving a child in exchange for something of value or promise thereof to the child or another person. In this situation, the child is being treated as a commercial sexual object.
And, you know, we talk a lot about human trafficking, but what are some of those other types of trafficking, you know, that exist?
Well, outside of domestic, you also have people that are coming from other countries. So we would call that global trafficking. And sometimes they come into people's homes, they may work as domestics, they may clean, they may take care of someone's children, and they may never pay them. They also, sometimes, they will pass them along to other friends and say, oh yeah, she can go ahead and clean your house for you, and you don't have to charge them, but sometimes they will reap the benefits from the care that they were given to this particular family. So there is global trafficking as well.
And I know I've read quite a few articles overall about the topic of trafficking. How prevalent is organ trafficking? Because that is something that people don't know much about too, you know, the organ trafficking.
Well, in my line of work, being in law enforcement, I'm very fortunate that I have not been able to investigate one of those cases. However, I have, with adjoining counties, have helped in investigating organ trafficking, where people are paid from other countries a lot of money to save the lives of a family member or someone that they may know, whether it's a distant relative, and they actually harvest their organs. There are some people that are still missing to this day. Their organs were, for a lack of a better word, harvested from their bodies. And sometimes when these agencies find their bodies, their organs are missing. And so they're selling them on the black market. So that's another thing that happens as well.
So with us knowing like the different types of trafficking and, you know, the definition specifically for, you know, the domestic minor, anyone under the age of 18, how can we identify like some of the signs and some of, I guess, the symptoms of someone who is actively being trafficked or someone who has been or who is at risk of being trafficked?
Go ahead.
Some of the signs are branding. Some of the girls be branded with tattoos. They'll be on their chest. It might be on their barcodes, on their arms. They'll have some on their back, and on their lower backs. I mean, they'll have them anywhere just to let them know, just to let the people know that you belong to me.
And what are some of the, like is there any physical or like other abuse that may happen with someone who has been trafficked that would give us like a public viewpoint that it has happened?
For the male aspect of it, you're either beat up. As she mentioned, the branding, there's tattoos that you receive as well. And I'm gonna use myself as an example. When I was trafficked, because I refused to service a group of my traffickers' friends, I got beat up to the point where I lost my eyesight in my left eye, to where now this is a prosthetic eye. Okay. I'm fine. I'm good.
Yes.
Good. Good.
Yes. So some of the other signs, if you don't do this,
I'll break your leg. If you don't do this, I'll cut you. If you don't do this, I'll slash your throat. You get threatened as well. But another issue that I dealt with was that when I refused to do a particular service, my left ankle was broken because I refused. Because I refused to go into a green room, I got beaten on my head with a crowbar. Because I refused to agree to service, and I'm gonna backtrack, my trafficker was a friend of the family that's still around to this day. I know him as Uncle. When I refused to service, I got threatened, I'm gonna tell your family or your mom and dad that you approached me. So that's me.
I was going to say another way that some, particularly the young women, are trafficked. It's a lot of coercion. There is, and I'm just going to give you something brief, just like Mark said, it's a lot of coercion. A young lady meets someone at Quick Trip. It starts off as, oh, you look good. How your hair, your nails, something like that. What's going on? They exchange numbers. Soon as something happens at home, she calls him. Now she's his confidant. They talk to one another. The next thing that happens, he starts buying her things. They then have sex. She runs away more than once with him. The parents or parent is kind of stuck. They don't know what to do. And the next thing you know, she's having sex in a hotel with a bunch of his friends because he said, I love you, and I'm going to take care of you better than your family ever took care of you. So we run into that a lot. And sometimes, being in those situations for long periods of time, when you are introducing alcohol and drugs, and then the words that they use to get them to do whatever it is that they want to do. And like in Mark's situation, sometimes it is physical, but a lot of the times it is mental on how they get these young men and young women to do these unspeakable things.
And other signs that you can pay attention to, if there's a younger girl that has a significantly older boyfriend, or if there's a young boy who has a significantly older girlfriend, those are particular signs. Frequent runaway. A lot of the behaviors, if you see sudden change in their appearance, pay attention to those things. If you see that particular child receiving expensive gifts that you haven't paid for, pay attention to the signs. If you monitor social media, a lot of that is happening on social media. Pay attention to the pictures. Pay attention to the language and what's going on. I received a referral last night from a young lady, 14, I believe, 14. She had explicit pictures on a social media site, and the caption read, "Book me. Book me." So pay attention to the unspoken. Pay attention to the signs. If it doesn't feel right, 9 times out of 10, it may not be right. Pay attention. If these young girls are coming with, hair, nails, Louis bags, Timbs, Jordans, whatever they come with, pay attention. If you didn't pay for it, pay attention. Because that's how they're being lured in, and not just from men, but from peers, women. In the schools, it's happening, it's reality. Young, they may try to approach them as a big sister or a mentor, things of that nature. And they lure these girls in, or even young boys in. And then they go into a different phase of life that they're not ready for. So just pay attention to some of those signs as well.
Just to piggyback off of paying attention, if you know the young man is a happy-go-lucky person, outgoing, doing this and the other, and all of a sudden he's standoffish. He's angry. You say the word blue, and that's the word that make him snap. pay attention. If you realize that this person, as she mentioned, the clothes, you know, I like to wear ties. I wear bow ties. I like that. But if you know this particular person all of a sudden is wearing holy jeans, all of a sudden, guys, she mentioned the Jordans and various type of tennis shoes, pay attention. The type of people that they hang with, pay attention. I'm a teacher in the school system, and I watch the kids, and I notice certain things, and I was, kind of see what's going on and kind of ask questions. And she mentioned she got a story yesterday. I had one this morning, a 9-year-old boy telling me his uncle touched him. Pay attention. They get depressed, start crying. They're angry. Pay attention.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, and Mark, thank you so much for sharing, because that takes courage and that takes strength. So I sincerely appreciate that. So boys are trafficked. Are there services available for boys?
No. It's out there. Of course, domestic violence, sex trafficking, human trafficking is for women and children. The last 5 years I've been speaking out. I've been to the commissioners, the governors, the mayors, the city council, talking about it happens to boys too. Simply because they always think the male is the perpetrator and not the victim. And right now that's something that we need to change. Because if we don't change it, we're always going to be considered the perp. So when I started telling my story, I was in a job interview. Family support specialist. Listening to me, about oh yeah, I'm going in the home, I'm going to check on the children, make sure they have everything they need. Yeah, that's part of it. I was in front of a group of ladies, and they told me, yeah, that's it. But they went to detail, and that's when I broke in that particular setting. Because I heard what they said about the children, and they have no one to listen to them. So when you talk about services, we need somebody. We need something in place. To this day, and I'm 46 years old, I have not yet received counseling. Me and God? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. But personally talking one-on-one with someone? No. We need services. We need to be able to get out there and figure out how to get services, how to get the mindset changed when the RFPs come out, meaning requests for proposals for monies. How can they incorporate boys, men? How can we do that? It takes all of us.
Yes, just to piggyback on what you were saying, Mark, he is 100% right. During my time of investigating internet crimes against children as well as human trafficking and CSAC, I've had several boys, and I had no place for them to go. And the only thing that I could do is call DFACS, and even then, the only thing that they can do is put them in a group home, which in turn, they would run away from there. And then they would go back to doing what they were doing before.
You are absolutely correct. There is a gap in services in regards to the services that we provide for our young males. Within DFACS, we have identified that as a huge issue because a lot of our young males are experiencing this as well as sexual abuse and things of that nature. Right now, there are only 2 DMST safe homes in Georgia. 2, and they're for girls. So what about the young boys? What about the young boys that are homeless? What about the young boys that are engaging in survival sex? What about those young boys? We're working with providers to try to find an answer, to try to even, build group homes and other agencies to try to combat this issue. But there are only 2 safe homes in Georgia, and that's only 30 youth that we can fit within those 2 homes. So we're looking for ways to build capacity. We're working on ways so that other service providers, can open up specific homes specifically for our boys and LGBTQ youth.
You mentioned there is a lack of services. So you have the 2 agencies in the state of Georgia that services all of the children. Now, what happens to those 30 beds when they're at capacity and you have person number 31 who needs services, but they don't have a bed available? What happens in that case?
And not just what happens when the beds are full, but what happens when they get denied services, because that happens as well. If you are labeled as a recruiter, you can't come into the safe home. If you're pregnant, you can't come into the safe home. So there are a number of indicators that indicate that you cannot go into the safe home. What if you're in Savannah? The safe homes are here in the metro Atlanta area. So what we're trying to do is work with providers, work with service providers to build capacity to help those. But they go into foster homes, and we try to wrap around services, you know, with the youth, with trauma-informed care therapy, mentors, and just really try to wrap services around that child so that they won't, you know, continue, or if they have gone into the life, to try to help them and rescue them and kind of give them hope, regardless of where they are.
Dr. Starr, you also mentioned that, you know, sometimes when the children run away, and it's not just children, it could be adult women, it could be adult men, LGBTQ population, boys. You mentioned survival sex. What is survival sex?
Well, a lot of times when you look at it, if you're talking about frequent runaways, they're not having jobs and things of that nature. They're trying to literally survive. They may have been kicked out of their homes. Where do they go? They can't go back to grandma's house. They can't go back to their mom's house because they're constantly, going at it or what have you. And sometimes in the home, like she mentioned earlier, you could actually be trafficked by a family member. So you feel like you have nowhere to go. So what happens in those cases? So you're out here in the streets, you're trying to survive, you're just trying to eat. And so at the cost of just eating, you engage in activity that basically can kind of put you in harm's way.
Okay, so we talk about, what's going on in the community. The children that we are referencing, they should be in schools. So are the educators equipped to identify all of this that's happening in the school system?
No, we're not. We're not. The school systems, school systems focus on domestic violence, but they don't focus on domestic minor sex trafficking. They think when the child is acting out sometime, that's because they're just bad, or ADHD. But their cousin touched them this morning before they left home. So no, they don't.
No, they don't. And we've been trying to get, to come into the schools, not just through the police department, because I also work with the police athletically, but to come into the schools and speak about some of these things. I've been fortunate where I can come to some schools and speak about human trafficking, cell phone safety, and inappropriate things that you should not be sending while you're in school or otherwise. But sometimes the principals and the administrators have a hard time digesting the information, and it's almost like they're hands off and they don't want any part of it. And they don't want to be liable of giving this information to some of the students and then having the students go home, oh yeah, Mom, guess what we talked about today? We talked about human trafficking, and we talked about don't take naked pictures and send them out to people. And then the parent is horrified, and then now they have to deal with the aftermath. That's what they don't want. So every now and again, I'm fortunate enough to go to a school and speak to students, but for the most part, it's just like, no, we don't want to talk about that.
And I think awareness is a huge piece as well. A lot of times, a lot of this information has been given to the social workers and counselors, but what about the teachers in the classroom that see the kids on a daily basis? I can say in Clayton County School District, there was a lot of pushback initially, but now the new superintendent is working with different providers, and they're going to actually post signage and posters in every middle school and high school. So if there are any indicators, there's a number that they can actually call. So that's for the teachers as well. So we still have a long way to go in the educational system. However, with more awareness and trainings and things of that nature, I think that more people will know, and I think more referrals will be made.
So I'm kind of simmering right here on the education role, because we expect, the educators to be knowledgeable about something like this. This is important. This is important. As parents, yes, we're doing everything that we possibly can. Educators are doing as much as they can, and I do understand that it's 30 kids and, the ratio is 1 to 30, maybe one plus. School counselors, the ratio is supposed to be 1 to 250, one school counselor for every 250 students, but in some counties, it's like 1 to 600. Yes, and they can't provide this service, and we can't lash out at the educators, but there should be something in place for the educators to be properly trained so that they can, know what steps to take. And I do know on work group 7 for the task force, we did a peer-to-peer summit about why do people go back, recidivism, the stages of change. And in work group 4, we actually did a blueprint for school counselors, specifically for them, so that they'll know step 1, you do this, step 2, you do this. So within the next, few months, hopefully, that will be dispersed throughout all of the school systems, because there is a huge gap in that area for educators. So if an educator does identify someone who has been, severely abused or trafficked, what should they do?
Well, with me, the only reason how they knew I was in trouble is by me being abused. I would go to school every day. I would not look at nobody in the eye. I would stay to myself. Those are some of the signs. I would sleep in class because I was up all night, or I would eat a lot because I wasn't getting fed because I wasn't doing what they wanted me to do. My trafficker was my mom. I'm good.
It's okay. With that, so we know it can happen in families. And families and parents often tell you, what go on in this house, stay in this house. I don't want defects. No offense, Dr. Starr. But I don't want defects all up in my house. So if you got a problem with something, you better take it to God in prayer. People have told me that as a service provider. God also gives us wisdom. God gives us provision. He gives us the resources. So with all of this illegal stuff that goes on with trafficking, what are some of the hot spots? Where are these, like, pockets?
Strip clubs, spas, gas stations, truck stops, hotels, especially the hotels. Restaurants. It's different places, different areas. Right here in Quick Trips, on Panola Road, Wesley Chapel, and Covington.
So what are some of these, and thank you for going there, because that's where I was going next. So where are these locations, like specific, like you mentioned the places, but like you mentioned Wesley Chapel.
Decatur is the #1 hotspot. DeKalb County is the #1 hotspot.
And on the south side, Terra Boulevard. There are hotels over on that side of town. Old National Highway. And let's not forget the internet also. A lot of times they're not walking, around. They're doing a lot of, in Fulton Industrial, yes. Metropolitan. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's also talk about our schools.
Yes, schools.
Our schools, the traffic right near school. You traffic, sometimes even in your church. You never know.
Thank you.
Social media, yeah. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, pimps have they have their own online. You can back page. You can they got www.pimps something. They got their own website.
So that shows that it's in diverse places. It doesn't look like it used to look where, the pimp was the fly guy with the fur and the big heeled shoes. So you have an inbound call and you have the out call. Could somebody elaborate on what that means, the difference between an inbound and an outbound?
Sure, an inbound call is when you set up a hotel room, you have the girl there or the male there, and the numbers on the internet. It could be anything from Backpage, Craigslist, all of the social media websites that were mentioned. They call a number, usually there's pictures posted, and the John will come in, make the purchase, commence the act. The out call is when the pimp drops off the male or the female at someone's home, at another hotel. It could be a car in the corner, on a street corner, or it could be at a party with a bunch of people. So that's the difference between the in-call and out-call. The in-call is when they come to the product. The out-call is when the product goes out to them. And I know it sounds crazy for me to say product, but that's the way they talk. That's the way they talk about a human being, someone's child. That's how they talk about it. And one of the reasons why, human trafficking is huge and so big, you can keep selling this girl or this young man, and you can make money over and over and over again. With drugs, once they smoke, sniff, whatever, the drug is gone. So they have to go and get some more. Same thing with the gun. Once they purchase the gun is gone. You can buy more bullets, but the gun is gone. That child, that adult, male, female, they're still there to be purchased and moved around all over the place. The biggest thing that's coming up soon to Atlanta is what? The Super Bowl, which is going to be next year. So keep an eye out for certain things. Like everyone in the panel said, their behavior is different. You know that you didn't buy these items. Where'd they get it from? They come home with the black eye. Where'd that happen from? They go and get their hair and their nails done. You didn't pay for that. It's a lot that goes into it. This is a very lucrative and intricate crime, because that's what it is.
So you mentioned two things. We've talked a lot about the victimization, those who are directly impacted, or the families that's impacted. Tell me more about the traffickers. Who can be a trafficker?
Anybody, male, female, that child's best friend, their neighbor, anybody in the family. I'm talking auntie, uncle, grandma, cousin. Girl, oh, you just got to do this for just one time, just one time. Anybody, parents, it could be the neighbor. And please don't be surprised. I know you all remember when they said that they found these girls in the house in a very affluent area down here in Georgia not too long ago. It could be happening at the house right next door. And you never know. When you see a lot of activity, most people think it's just drugs. Not always. It could be a combination of both. Drugs, guns, weapon. It could be a combination of many things, including a young lady or a young man in there having sex for money and being exploited. Go ahead.
It can also be kids. Your friends. Because there's a lot of kids recruit other kids, especially at school. So,
I'm glad you mentioned that because at Tabitha's house, we've been called to schools before. Peers exploiting peers in the bathroom. They go in the bathroom and they're turning these favors $5 each. You drop your kids off at the mall to go to the movies, and they turn in favors in the mall bathroom or in the movie theater because it's dark and they can't be seen. So it is true about peers pimping out peers. And I'm not talking about only high school students. I'm talking about elementary and middle schools. 5th grade, we've been called to an elementary school before because the administration was not really sure with how to address this with the parents. Okay? Describe the buyers, the Johns.
Could be me. Could be the businessman, basketball player, deacon in the church, car lot attendant, police officer, firefighter, brother, cousin, uncle.
And the buyers are not only exclusive to men. Women can do it too. Women can exploit, be exploited, and be the trafficker. So it's not just, for men with the Johns, but what are some of the other characteristics of the Johns from that Shapiro study that was published a while ago? I know they had the pie chart of where the majority of the buyers come from when we reference the metro Atlanta area. You all remember that one?
Upper 285. Upper 285.
North of 285. Of 100% of people who were surveyed, I think it was like 42% were found north of 285, people who openly admitted to buying sex from minors. Openly admitted. Okay? And that's just from that one study. Only 9%, I believe, was near the airport. And we have the world's busiest airport. I know we've talked quite a bit about what this looks like, but what can we do as a church? What can we do to make a difference, not only in this community, but to set that standard for other churches to even follow, for other community organizations to get involved? How can we make a difference?
I would say to keep the dialogue open. I would say, and again, this is just from my experience, I know that sometimes, and I appreciate the fact that we are actually here in the church and we can speak about some of these things, and there are some things that go on that are unsaid, but keep the dialogue going and keep yourself informed and always be aware of what goes on in your own community. Again, if it doesn't seem right, make that call. It's not right. And it's not going to hurt to make that phone call if it doesn't look right to you. I just say keep the dialogue open in the community with everyone and be aware. Just be aware. I love the nosy neighbor. I love a nosy neighbor because let me tell you something. That nosy neighbor makes my investigation awesome. Awesome. And by the time when I'm done getting all of that information from the nosy neighbor, that nosy neighbor has given me such great information that I can go back to my desk and hit that computer and go to the jail and take this person to jail and do what I need to do. And keep in mind, like Dr. Gill said, I have arrested male and female perpetrators who do this to children. So I just want to just say, keep the dialogue going and look out for one another and look out for our children. Just look out for them.
And I will add to that, invest in our children. And when I say invest in our children, invest in the prevention. Invest in mentoring programs that are out here consistently doing the work to try to help these young girls and young boys before they even become victims of exploitation. Volunteer your time. Volunteer your time. Volunteer your time. Get involved with organizations that are already out here. You don't have to go out and start your own nonprofit or anything like that, but help those that are out here that are trying to work with these young people. Open up your facilities to allow us to have programs and things of that nature, because a lot of the children are right here in service on Wednesdays and Sundays. Find some creative things, and I'm not taking anything away from the churches, but allow the community organizations create partnerships and collaborations with organizations like Ladies of Favor. I've been doing this for the last 11 years. It was because a church opened up their doors. I've been able to provide my services to these young girls. They can come in weekly for mentoring and help and things of that nature. We need more of that, not just on the south side, not just on the east side. We need a lot of organizations or churches to open up the doors to assist us in helping. And just invest in our youth, invest your time. It only takes an hour a week, an hour, to help change the life of a young girl. And I'm just speaking specifically towards young girls because that's who I focus on, but only an hour. We waste an hour sometimes strolling Instagram and Facebook. But that 1 hour can change these girls' lives forever. Ask me how I know, because I am a product of mentoring. I went from a statistic to a success story because someone invested in my life. So all I'm saying is just invest in our youth. Open up the door so that we can have a place to come. Because a lot of nonprofits, we don't have big budgets. We're just doing this because it's a passion. Help us help these young people.
I would add to that to say just listen to us. Don't judge us. Because if I come to you broken, I need you to listen and have an open heart and an open mind to hear what I have to say. Because your words could be the words that get me out of what I'm in. But if I come to you, or if that young man or young woman come to you and tell you and you judge them, you're pushing them away. Build an alliance. I'm part of the Church of God in Christ, and one thing that our bishop has told me just recently is that we're going to build an alliance with our 100 churches in our jurisdiction, to where when we have our monthly meetings, that topic of domestic violence, sex trafficking is going to be a major topic to help get the word out, because they don't know. They don't know. So listen to us and be open to hear what we have to say.
And I know everyone has heard us mention that number. Call the number, the number. I want to give you all that phone number to call if you suspect It doesn't have to be a confirmed case, but even the suspicion that something's not right. The number is 888-3737-888. That's the National Human Trafficking Hotline. It's 888-3737-888. We have information tables set up over by the windows, and make sure you stop by to gather information about the different organizations that's here, that's making a difference in the lives of the young women, the young men. I know Mark is kind of being a little quiet down there, but he's one of the leaders in opening that home for boys here in the state of Georgia. And we need more men. We need more men involved in mentoring, because statistics also suggest that when a young male is a pimp, that ratio is like 1 to almost 62 to 67. That one guy has the potential to pimp between 62 to 67 young girls. I'm just repeating what the stats say. These are the young males who are in the juvenile detention centers, who don't have mentors. When their sentencing is up, they're released to the street, they go right back to that life. So what are we going to do as a community? But we need men to step up also. Communities, churches, it's a collaborative effort. One other thing that I want to mention that Tabitha's House is doing, starting next Wednesday on the 7th, we will have healthy relationships groups for young girls between the ages of 13 and 17. Between the ages of 13 and 17, but from 5 to 6:30. So they can still go to their youth group on Wednesday nights, but we will talk about healthy relationships. What do those look like? How do you communicate? What is your body language saying? What is your dress saying? What are you saying verbally? How to advocate for yourself without putting yourself at risk. So those will be held, and I know we're running short on time now, but if you are interested in even doing a brief mental health screening as adults, we have the information over at the Tabitha's House table. We're doing brief mental health screenings for depression and anxiety. It's 5 minutes. You fill out the information. It's all confidential. You will turn it in at the table, and we will call you and we will talk to you personally about the conditions that could possibly surface based on the scores you get on these mental health screeners that have the validity and the reliability to support if it's mild, moderate, or severe depression or anxiety. Because this month we focused on from the inside out. And we gotta heal. We gotta heal so that we can be strong to help others. So I wanna thank all of our panel participants. Are there any closing thoughts or comments that you all would like to make?
Just real quick, the Buddy House will be a drop-in center for boys. Our acronym stands for the better understanding of difficulties and differences within our youth, and our motto is where a hug is just an arm stretch away. The drop-in center entails, if Detective Weber brought me someone in off the street, he would just rest. 3 to 5 days, do nothing but rest, eat, sleep, do what you need to do. But within that time, that's when we're going to implement the services, checking what that child, what he needs. Once we see what he needs, everything will be in that one place. The doctor's office will be here, dental office here, psychological here, and so on. From there, our program will lead into life skills and job readiness skills. From that third part will be roommate-style apartments in one place. Our program is to run from 6 months to 18 months, and if we need to extend, we will extend. Ages 18 to 24 years old. Younger, 16 to 17 or 15 and up, we would need parental permission, depending on how that process goes. But the Buddy House will be a one-stop shop, so they can receive everything they need to. When they're ready to go back into that community, they're able to go back as citizens and not scared and not worried about that person that trafficked them. That's our goal.
I would also like to ask if there are any individuals that would like to get your daughters, sisters, or nieces involved in a mentor and empowerment organization. Please see our table, ladies a favor. We're here to help girls 6 through 21, and we work with them on self-esteem, abstinence, spiritual guidance, things of that nature. But my goal is to empower, encourage, and expose these girls to greatness. I want these girls to know that through God, they're able to do anything regardless of what they've experienced in their life. So we're looking for mentors, we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for partners. I would love to be able to we're in DeKalb Preparatory Academy, but I would love to be able to bring our organization in DeKalb County. We're in Clayton and some of the schools there, and also at Clark Atlanta, but our girls will get a mentor. They'll be able to get global exposure. We're taking a group of girls to Costa Rica in June. We're teaching these girls Spanish. We're helping them, and these are girls that statistics say that they shouldn't become great. Statistics state that they're not going to amount to anything. But we take these girls and we bring them in and we let them know that they are loved and that we let them know that anything is possible. So please, let's come together, ladiesofavor.com. I would love to collaborate and work with you all. Thank you.
Would you stand and give these wonderful, wonderful ministers and community activists, empowerment centers, thought leaders. I want you to keep standing for a second, and I know tonight is a little maybe unconventional in terms of what you may have expected tonight, but I hope you see why it's so necessary that engage in these types of conversations. I sat and listened to even more statistics and fought back tears at times to hear some of the story and the trauma that our people on the panel have experienced. It also made me appreciate even more and recommit to our own Tabitha's house here. 4 years ago, we started Lunch Tabitha's House for this same purpose, after having to kind of help young girls, a few 7 to 8 years of age, who've been raped by adults, and just introduced to this diabolic, evil, inhumane, violent, and satanic realm. And we came to this community. I don't count it by accident that God placed us here in this community. Somebody mentioned the Wesley Chapel corridor and Panola Road, and how DeKalb County is just growing exponentially in terms of child sex trafficking. And we have to do more than just come here and praise the Lord and sing and shout and not make an impact in this community. And I just want to do a couple things before we leave. I want to certainly, again, thank God for Dr. Gill and all of our panelists. Wow. I want to give you an opportunity to meet and have further dialogue with them over to the left at the tables when they leave. However you can get involved, however you can help.